Welcome back to Let's Be Blunt with Montel, the podcast where we have real conversations about everything and anything cannabis, the industry, and the laws shaping it. I'm your host, Montel Williams, and today we have a very special episode packed with essential information that I know you don't want to miss. Joining us are two incredible advocates and legal experts who have made it their mission to protect cannabis users and educate people on their rights. Please welcome the Pot Brothers at law, Craig and Marc Wasserman. These guys are not just attorneys, they're a movement committed to ending cannabis prohibition and empowering individuals across the United States. Craig, Marc, thank you so much. Welcome for being part of the show today, sir. Gentlemen.
Thank you for having us, Montel.
Absolutely.
We appreciate
Absolutely.
you.
I appreciate you being here. Let's get started from the break. Let's jump back a little bit. Let's tell me a little bit about each of your backgrounds, where you're from, how you grew up, or how you came to cannabis, and what made you want to get interested in a career in law, especially around cannabis. So let's start with you, Craig.
Well, I'm going to make a long story short. We've actually gone over our background, and while it can be, somewhat entertaining, it's better off time spent talking about what we're pushing out there. But long story short, I've been smoking cannabis. I'm 63, over 45 years. My brother started smoking cannabis at a young age, stealing it from me from my room, and so we've been cannabis users, our whole adult life. And it's when my son, and we both went into law. I went in first, 10 years ahead of him. He was doing criminal law that was representing cannabis patients at the time, way back under medical. I was doing business litigation and other things. Then my son wanted to get into the medicinal part back in the days when you could have a collective and a cooperative. He got into the business. We went to school on the law back then, which was, back in the collective and cooperative days. It was semi-legal. And we had to defend him a few times in court because he was busted for 24 plants. He had all the recommendations, but cops abused his rights. He didn't consent to searches. Fast forward, we got him out of 2 different cases with 4 felonies each, twice, not because he had the right paperwork for his medicinal caregiving status, because he shut the fuck up and listened to us, what we've been telling him for years. And basically he told my brother, you guys got to get on Instagram.
So we got on Instagram actually January 22nd, 2015, coming up on 10 years, and we just didn't really know what to do with it and decided that we were going to give good information to California cannabis patients. As my brother mentioned, I became an attorney in 1996 when Prop 215 was enacted in California, becoming the first state to allow medical access. But as it was then, and even to some degree now, it's still a crime first. And then you have to prove, I have my physician's recommendation, I'm doing things right, and that becomes a defense. So we wanted to give information to California cannabis patients on, they're driving around with it, what happens when you get pulled over, it smells. And we created what we now call the script, a simple 25 words, which are based on your 4th, 5th, and even 6th Amendment constitutional rights when peacefully engaging with law enforcement. And that was our whole thing, trying to protect people, giving them a better understanding of how to deal with a traffic stop, come out of it alive, and come out of it with all of your rights, remedies, and defenses intact, so you could use them to fight a criminal case, which probably never should have been brought, to bring a civil action against law enforcement for violating your rights, all while becoming the first attorneys on social media to openly smoke and use cannabis in an effort to really break the stigma of cannabis users that, hey, attorneys are doing it. We encourage, there's doctors, there's judges, there's so many professionals out there who keep themselves in what we call the green closet. And we wanted to encourage them to come out to show people that this negative stigma has got to be eradicated, while we're dealing with the legalization as it moves forward. And over the years, we're taking these baby steps towards legalization, but you're still seeing people getting arrested, being put in jail. My God, there's still so many people in jail for nonviolent offenses surrounding cannabis use and transportation distribution of cannabis, trying to get it to people. So
Mark, you just blew me up here, my friend. You gave me 75 different directions to go in and ask you questions, my friend. You just covered so much, it's crazy. Let's slow down for a second. Let's slow down a little bit. Let's back up. Both of you again.
Where you want to go?
Yeah, but both of you are definitely cannabis users, so I get that. Your firm has been really at the forefront of trying to educate citizens about their rights. So let's start right there. You mentioned something that you've been working with that's Script. Let's talk a little bit more about that in depth.
Okay, so the Script.
Okay, so what happened was, as the Script developed, as we developed our Instagram page, which was, my son said, started an IG page. We're like, another thing. We were over Facebook when this started. Like, what are you talking about? And he's like, people get free advice. You can give. No one gives free advice. No attorneys give free advice. You give it to my friends for all these years. So, here's this thing, IG. And we started off initially to really break the stigma and give some advice, because I'm more conservative, and we were asked to be on a show on Be Real TV, and it's called Getting High With, and it's a kid named Adam Mill at a talk show, and he wanted to talk about Prop 64, and they smoke and do blunts and take hits during the talk show. And I had to really think, I'm going to get in trouble by the state bar. And then I thought about it, going, I got my rec. Everybody has their recommendations back then. Let's just do it and show people that you can be intelligent, have intelligent conversations while you're actually smoking cannabis. So that's how the IG page started at that session with Be
and
Real
give out
TV.
that the whatever the IG page is. Give it out right now. So
it's pot_brothers_at_law. All those underscores created by my brother hitting a space bar. But that's when we decided and it was only 15-second videos back then. And so we created a series of videos. This is what you do when you get pulled over. And it started with just invoke your fifth and shut the fuck up. But people were asking questions. What if the cops do this? What if he says that? What if he does this? And that's where me and my brother really brainstormed and came up with ultimately 25 words that you use, the only 25 words you use. And we started creating what we call the daily script review. So to give you those 25 words, this is what we do. Big brother, what do you say when the cop first comes up to your window and pulls you over? What do you say?
Now wait, and the cop pulls you over, comes up to your window, and you're smoking pot, or you just smoke pot? I mean, there's two different answers, right?
Number one, we do not advocate for smoking while driving.
No. And let's make sure we get that clear. We're not saying that, but let's say that for some reason, you just ran down to your car, you're sitting here on the street in front of your house, and the car's not on. And, let's say that you just happen to have smoked something in your house, and you still are reeking a little bit because, you were standing in the middle of your clouds rather than blown away. And go ahead.
It's funny. It depends on the state for one. You got to Google your state, because in California, the smell alone is not probable cause for any type of search. The smell alone. So if they walk up to you, as long as if there's smoke still in the car, that's one thing. But there's laws that if it's not operating, then that's legal conduct. But if it's just the smell alone, let's just, if there's no smoke, it's just.
And then right while you're talking, while you're saying smell alone, let's also remember that there are hemp-based cigarettes out there that have no THC in them at all. And that smell is almost identical to really rank bad weed. However, it is identical. And I think, across the country, I know that legislatively and in courts, there have been lots of cases that have been thrown out because, we've not technically figured out yet whether or not a human being has the same quality, nasal passages as some dogs do. And we even question what some dogs do. So let's start right there. So there's a smell, but you got to prove that it's marijuana. How could it couldn't be? It could be,
Well,
right?
great question. Great. This leads us to the very first line of the script is, why did you pull me over? No matter what they say, why did you pull me over? And we'll just do it real quick as we hit each line. There's a case that says law enforcement has to come up on a traffic stop and give you the ticket. And they can't prolong the stop. No matter what they think or whatever, they have a hunch. They got 8-10 minutes to give you that ticket unless they develop independent probable cause to keep you there longer. So you want to establish, why'd you pull me over? Your light was out. Okay, thank you very much. What's that I smell? And then instead of saying, it's none of your effing business, it's, I'm not going to talk to you. We came up with the most polite way to say it's none of your business by saying, I'm not discussing my day. It's just that simple. Because you don't want to say, I didn't smoke. You don't want to say you did smoke, because we have people who say, yeah, I smoked a couple hours ago. They're still getting a DUI, even though you could probably beat it later, maybe. You might have a jury who thinks, smoked a joint in the morning. He's still high, 5 hours later. You don't know. So you never want to admit to anything, no matter what it is. So you never say anything about when I last smoked, why I smell. Just, I'm not discussing my day. That's it. And they're going to keep bombarding you with questions. And eventually you're going to have to say what, Mark?
Am I being detained or am I free to go? Because at that point, you want to give the cop a decision to make. And what we've heard and seen over all these years of teaching people this, if there's nothing crazy going on in your car, you don't have anything in plain view, the cop, this is also where you find out what kind of cop you got. Because as a lot of people think we don't like cops, it's just not true. We respect cops, we like cops, we don't like the bad cops. And we don't like the cops who don't respect the Constitution and your rights. And when you say, I'm not discussing my day, am I being detained or am I free to go? And you get a cop who says, well, why can't you just tell me one simple thing? I'm trying to keep you safe. Where were you going? Where are you coming from? None of that is their business. And the cop who gets agitated and irritated probably shouldn't have a badge. The ones who realize, this guy knows his rights. I don't see really anything going on. Yeah, here's your ticket. Here's your warning. Be on your way. Those are the good cops who respect your rights. And they're really trying out to get somebody out there who's doing something wrong versus turning a simple traffic ticket into a misdemeanor or a felony or whatever else they want to do by getting somebody to incriminate themselves. And people can say things and inadvertently incriminate themselves when they haven't even done anything wrong. So if then the cop says, you're on your way, great, good for you. But if he says you're being detained, then what do you say, big brother?
I invoke
and that's your Fifth Amendment right to say nothing. And you always comply with physical commands.
Well, tell them why you have to.
Well, the Supreme Court has, in its infinite wisdom, said you must speak to invoke your right to silence. You have to explicitly state it. There was a case where somebody was being interrogated. They asked about a murder weapon, and the guy did one of these numbers. He didn't talk, but he did one of these, guilty looks. And that was ultimately used against him. And the Supreme Court says you've got to explicitly state it. So I invoke the Fifth.
Just because he...
Go ahead.
Yeah, just because he stayed silent for 6 hours of interrogation didn't mean he invoked
anything you say or do,
and anything you say or do
can be held against you, as they say. So once you invoke the Fifth, you're going to get a cop who says, why can't you cooperate with me? I'm just trying to make sure you're okay to drive. I'm just trying to keep everybody safe. And they use that as a little trick. Cooperation does not mean answering questions. It means you see the lights, pull over. License, insurance, and registration, cooperating. Get out of the car, cooperate. Put your hands behind your back. All those physical commands, that's cooperating. That's what you need to do. And then after you invoke the Fifth, when they keep coming at you with questions, you shut the fuck up. And that was the really the most blunt way and that's what we had always taught my nephew and other people. And as a criminal defense attorney for 27 years, that's just the easiest way to get it across. Shut the fuck up. Keep your mouth shut. Nothing you can say in those moments is going to help you. You might think you can talk your way out of it, but you could inadvertently say something that's going to then give the cop further independent probable cause to do things like search your vehicle.
And then let's back up there. You do this. You were practicing law in the state of California, and every state is a little different, and even California is different, where not every municipality is signed on to cannabis, right?
Correct.
So you can go from one municipality to the next and get arrested for having something in your pocket, right?
Correct.
Well, not quite that distinction, because in the state, if you have under an ounce, no matter what city you're in, that's legal. It's what you're looking at is probably less, or maybe a third of the cities in the state of California allow marijuana, legal businesses in their city. So it's hard to people. There's deserts of where there's no legal access because cities aren't allowing the legal business in their city. They can't. There was a case that just came down where they can't stop a legal delivery who is set up in another city under the correct city and state laws from delivering into another city that says you can't have a business there, but you can deliver into that city.
Wow. And now can they stop you? Let's say you're in your private home. Can they come up and say, we were walking by and smelled something coming off your porch, and they can't stop that, right?
No, not any longer. But this is interesting. I just read an article. I want to say it was Illinois.
I was just getting ready to say Illinois to you, because I understand that in Illinois, you can go one block, being in a different little municipality that, some Hanyo decides, I'm going to arrest you.
No, it's absolutely correct. But there was a case, I want to say Illinois, but I'm not 100%. Google it. We don't do any other law other than California. But the court in that state held, this is really weird, the cop smelled unburnt marijuana. That smell gave him the right to see if the marijuana was being properly transported in a lockbox, smell-proof box, in the trunk. That's the law in that state. But if it had been burnt marijuana smell, that wouldn't have been cause, because it's legal to smoke it. But because it was raw, it was okay to use the smell.
How did they determine that you got a cop who's got a nose that's better than a canine?
I hate telling stories of court, especially when I lose, but we've beat so many cases on the smell. It's not probable cause, right? We had a case where somebody we feel was profiled in a hotel parking lot, and the cop walks up. The cop testifies that from the smell from the car, she could determine he had a lot of
the illegal amount.
Now, she walks up to the cab. The guy unfortunately says, I have a little bit here. And he took out like an eighth or whatever he had in the middle of his car. So based on that, she checked the trunk, and lo and behold, he had 10 pounds. So I just did what your guy told me not to. So he gets busted for having 10 pounds. At the hearing, I was arguing the smell. It started from the smell. And what I really wanted to do was take some bomb-ass skunky weed into court in a sealed container, one bud, and open it up and ask the cop, how much weed do I have? Because it would have smelled the whole court up. You know how that one fresh, when you open it up, the smell. So I hammered her a lot on this, and she couldn't tell me. But the judge, it's going bad when the judge tells you, you're right, and then all of a sudden there's a but. Because he said, I only have a little, gave her the right to check if he only had a little. If he hadn't said that, we would have won. So all these things build up our whole don't say anything. Ultimately, if you don't remember the script, just STFU.
Got it. And you're talking about what works in California. Would you think this would work in other states?
So it works in every state. Your constitutional rights are the same. So just the basic idea that you're only saying 25 words, you're shutting the fuck up, no matter what you're pulled over for, no matter what you get charged with. At the end, you are going to have the best available defense that an attorney can give because you've protected and preserved your 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights, and you didn't consent to a search. If a cop ultimately wants to search your car and you consent, it's over. We can't fight that and say it was an illegal search afterward. You consented, done. Maybe it was a lawful search. Maybe it wasn't. In those moments, you as the person in the car, you don't know. You don't know the law. You don't know what they can and cannot do. But when you don't consent, when you stick to our script and keep your mouth shut, then it's going to make the attorney's job easier to uncover an unlawful search. Because and it's different in all states, right? You have California where the smell isn't probable cause. You have some, Texas that it is probable cause. There's states where it's just medical, which leaves open at least an argument that if it smells, well, I'm a medicinal patient. I have my recommendation from a doctor. That's not illegal conduct. So by doing all this, you're just giving your attorney the best tools to be able to fight later in court.
Well, you know what else is really sad state of affairs is people think cannabis is legal, and it's not. I don't know if you've ever watched the show On Patrol Live. It's on Friday and Saturday, and they follow cops around. It's like a new version of Cops. And the amount of people going through the Carolinas and those areas that act like they're in California where it's really no big deal. I mean, it's illegal, period. It's still illegal.
Even though you can get it anywhere you want in California.
Yep. They're rolling with bags like we used to get back in the day. I mean, it's like it's illegal. And you see some of the cops don't care that it's a little bit. They're not going to bust balls over it. But that's where they can get you into. If you lie to me, if you have any, if we find it, it's going to be worse. It's like, just don't consent, because even if you have something in your car you shouldn't have, you don't consent. It's not going to make one bit of difference. If they go in and find it, it gives us a chance to go, hey, wait a minute, you didn't have the right cause.
And again, they don't have, if you don't consent, they got to go back and get a search warrant, right?
Well, they can do it. They either have to get a warrant or have a real good probable cause on the spot to justify later what their cause was.
Talking about illegality and legality, there are people, we've had many cases where people, they fly into California. Hey, legal. I went to a legal store. I bought, 4 or 5 ounces. I bought an ounce here. I bought an ounce there. I put it in my carry-on and I'm flying back. And now they're looking at felonies, and they wonder why, because, well, I thought it was legal. I just bought it at a legal place. And well, how come I'm getting busted now? And it's still illegal to fly through airports with it wherever you go because of the federal level and the prohibition that still exists. So as my brother said, there is a big problem with saying that it's legal. It's partial legalization. You have limits in any state. Some states allow you to have 2 ounces. If you have more, now you're looking at misdemeanors and, potential felonies in some states. In California, if you have more than an ounce, you're still looking at getting that citation. And so I think it's a big misnomer to say that it's illegal. It's just, it's limited, and you've got to know that, especially when you're traveling.
And, let's since we bring up the federal law thing, what are you, if I had to put crystal balls on both of you guys, what do you think the next year looks like when it comes to the Fed doing something? I think, one of the things that we've discussed in here multiple times is the fact that, there's this thought process out here by some people in the industry who think, oh my goodness, if they reschedule, everything's going to be just fine. It's not going to be just fine. We're going to open up a Pandora's box and more. It's going to be way worse.
It's going to be worse.
I suppose people don't understand that, if they, if the Fed reschedules, now who does this come under? You take a drug that is a non-usable drug, now you put it comes under pharmaceuticals. If it comes under pharmaceuticals, who's in charge of pharmaceuticals? The FDA. And who's in charge of the FDA? Well, the FDA says that pharmaceuticals have to be sold in pharmacies, not in dispensaries. And that's another area that I think, there's so many people who spent so much money, building out pharmacy or building out dispensaries, and they are literally sitting on the cusp of having them close. Though I'm not sure. The cat is so far out the bag, it's going to be tough for the Fed to come in and enforce that. I don't think we have enough law enforcement. Even we put the entire U.S. military under charge of the DEA and said, take care of this issue. There's not enough of them on the ground to be able to do that in this country. However, people don't, I think, I keep saying, be careful what you ask for if you keep begging for rescheduling.
Well, we have the same arguments with Prop 64 that legalized cannabis in California. Watch what you wish for. It is a complete cluster.
Right.
You know what I'm talking? A cluster F. It is just completely. The legal market is getting creamed by over regulations, over taxation. It's horrible. We didn't need $1 million to open up a dispensary, in 2012. You turned some lights on, you threw some stuff in this thing, you had a dispensary. You didn't need $1 million worth of, building and planning. I mean, that's just one example. And then the overtaxation in California, where it could be effective tax on the consumer of 40% from the
which is ridiculous, and that's the reason why the black and gray market is so robust and going to stay that way. I'm not an economist.
I'm a political scientist because I couldn't do math and science, but isn't a little bit of a huge amount better than a lot of a little? I mean, instead of a 15% excise tax on top of all the other state and city taxes, if you had a 1%, it just doesn't make sense when more people would go get the legal market cannabis if it was that much.
I don't see how federal.
That's a whole nother issue.
I don't see how any type of federal legalization is ultimately going to work. We talk about rescheduling, and then you hear people talk about just descheduling, just take it off. But then you're going to have problems with all the people who are in jail for nonviolent cannabis offending. Now it's suddenly legal. Where are they going to be released to? In my mind, I think it gets descheduled. They release everybody who is in jail for nonviolent cannabis possession and crimes and put them to work and make it easy. Like, you want to open a shop to make T-shirts. You should be able to, or you want to grow apples. Why isn't it agriculture that comes in and say, hey, open your cannabis farm and we'll treat it like you're growing apples, and put all those people to work there? But the government wants to come in and really take hold and get their share. I just don't see it happening. I'm such a pessimist about it because in 1996, when California became the first for medical, you had all the pundits saying, oh, there it is. California did it. 5 years, federal legalization's coming. And then it took until 2012 for Colorado to be the first to do adult use. And then everybody went up and said, oh, federal's coming. And I just don't think it's ever going to happen.
You look at how many states we have now that have gone legal, one way or the other, either it be medical or medical and adult use. I mean, where is the accountability of the state and the state representatives at the federal level when their state says we want legal cannabis and it's not getting done at the federal level? They're just ignoring their states, their constituents, and they're not being held to the fire. What people have to do, we've said this before, we've had politicians tell us this on podcasts we used to do. You got to call and write and say, we're not going to vote for you. That's all they know.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that, there used to be a day, I've been involved in cannabis now since really 2000, 2001. And so for the last 23 years, I'm the same as you guys. I thought back about 2010 when things started opening up a little bit more, I thought, oh, this is right around the corner. And then if you would ask me, you can ask me for the last 5 years, I've said, guys, you don't understand. We got another 20 years to go, at least another 20 years.
It seems that way, and it might be better for the industry, because if the feds legalize it, let's say, or take it off the schedule and have their own set of regulations and their own taxes, it's going to be a shit show, and that's what you wish for.
As much as a shit show as it is right now, when you've got all the competing interests going down the hemp route, and we don't know where that's going to end up, because there are definitely deleterious products out there that are really bad products for people coming through the hemp channel.
Well, California just I think Newsom executive order banning all hemp, any kind of THC in hemp at all.
Got it.
Because people were getting around there was a loophole there with the different types of THC 8, 9, Delta, this, that. I don't know all those details personally, sure, but I know they tried to close in that loophole that if it's intoxicating, it can't be in it.
Well, and the Farm Bill, says if it's 0.3% or less, it's okay. And there's, like California, like my brother just said, now they're saying, no, if it has any amount of THC, we don't care. We don't want it on the shelves.
That's absolutely. Go ahead. Unless it's what?
No, unless it's in a legal shop.
Yes.
So I think they're trying to help the cannabis industry, but the government doesn't know how to help itself. It's just pathetic that they didn't ask any of the real players, anybody who'd been in the industry for 20, 30 years, the best way to go about this. And it should be free enterprise like any other business. That's been my beef this whole time. It shouldn't be 2 a city, 3 a city. You had to bid for it and you have to pay for it, and look at all the bribes and all the city politicians that have gone down in the last 5 to 10 years from taking bribes to get people so people could get their city licenses, which you have to get before you can get the state. You can't even look at the state till you get the city approval. It's a mess.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it across the country, I mean, we have 38 states in the District of Columbia that have some sort of cannabis law right now. They all differ. I mean, I'm involved, and right now myself involved in Georgia. And Georgia passed a law for medical that doesn't allow for any smoking or edibles. However, you can sell pills, tinctures, and other things that you put in your mouth, but because you don't chew them, they're legal. But if you had to chew it, it would be. It's just so dark.
No, crazy. Wasn't Florida like that? Isn't Florida like that?
Florida, I can't figure out what's going on down here. It's a state. It's just, there was a while where I thought that there was no flour, but then there is flour. And then I thought that there was no edibles, and now they're edible. I have no idea what's going on in the state.
And that's the other problem too for consumers. It's unfortunate that every state is so different, and you can think that it's legal and it's not. And that's the problem. We tell people to check the state you're in. Smell probable cause. Just Google it, Chat GPT it, and you can get answers pretty quick. We also like to shout out Normal, the website. They have a great map on all the laws in every state that you can go to and look at your state, click on your state, click on medicinal or adult use, or maybe it has nothing, and it gives you everything you need to know about the state that you're going to be in.
I think it's this question is a lot of people probably have come to you with this, but is it legal in a state where there is a legal medical or recreational program in existence where your employer has the right to test you for cannabis?
Every state is different. We know some states initially put protections in for pre-employment physicals regarding testing for cannabis. California just recently passed the same thing where you can't do a pre-employment physical and ask to see if someone has smoked cannabis unless it's a certain industry, something that's tied to the federal industry, or if it's a safety truck driver or forklift driver. I think they made exceptions for those. Even though I still think it's ridiculous. It shouldn't matter. You shouldn't be impaired at work.
Right.
Period. It shouldn't matter what you do off work. If you're impaired, don't do it.
And then you got to wonder what does impairment mean? And I only say that.
That's a good one.
Yeah, because if I smoke something at 10 o'clock at night and I go to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, am I impaired?
Likely not. If it's just cannabis.
Likely not if it's cannabis. But if I smoke something at 10 o'clock on Friday night, next Friday night, I can still detect it in a blood test or hair test or a P test. So, but do they have?
There's no correlation. There's no correlation. There just isn't, because you take me, you, my brother. God knows what we would test our cannabinoids or whatever it is that they test for. My brother knows a little more of that because he does the DUI stuff. That people could think of kill an elephant, but I'm not impaired. But it's still, I'm going to test high. There's no correlation. That's why people who get DUIs, weed DUIs, 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, it's because they opened up their mouth and said, I smoked an hour, 5 hours last night. If they had said nothing, they would have not have gotten that DUI. And it's just an assumption. Go ahead.
No, because it's very important when you're talking about the DUIs, and especially knowing your rights from state to state, like in California. And a lot of states are similar, but again, we practice in California. You want to Google this in your state. Do you have to do the field sobriety test? No, they're voluntary. You don't have to follow the finger touching, because it's so subjective. And if you just Google, even for alcohol-related DUIs, innocent people arrested. I think Tennessee just came out with a number like they had 600 people who tested zero for alcohol. I'll do it. I could do this. I could walk the line. And the cop arrests them because it's subjective. And they say, oh, you failed this. You didn't touch your nose right. You didn't do that. And people are getting arrested for DUIs that shouldn't be, simply because they don't know those tests are voluntary. You can't rely on them. And when it comes to cannabis, right, in California and other states, 0.08 becomes is what's called the limit. It's a legal presumption that you're impaired to drive. And that's through, quantified through testing over the decades of however they did that with alcohol. Nothing exists for cannabis. There's no scientific evidence.
Yeah, and every individual is different, the way they process cannabis. So therefore, how could you come up with a test that says there is a certain amount of THC in your body that would cause inebriation when we don't even know how much THC is actually absorbed through the connectors in your body, CB1, CB2. That's just, I don't understand how they think they're going to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now let me change, focus just for a second. You guys have been working really diligently at trying to put some protections in place for people who are industry employees and people who work in the cannabis industry, right? And in the form of maybe possibly even unionizing. Do you believe in that?
In unionizing, it's, you know what? That's, I practiced workers' compensation law for 25 years, representing injured workers. And a lot of the, I know there's needs for unions. I really don't. It's political hot potato maybe, but I've seen some unions that are good, and I've seen unions that don't do crap for people. So I'm more of a, employers should be fair. Employers should be fair whether there's a union involved or not. I think it somewhat potentially harmed the California model, because I believe the unions got involved in order to get cannabis from a manufacturer to a store. You have to use a distributor who needs their own independent license. In a lot of other states, you grow it, you package it, and you can bring it to the stores. The impediment of putting a distro in the middle, and that was a union deal, I think, that they negotiated as part of the regulations surrounding Prop 64. So it's, whether it's union or non-union, I think just employers should be fair to their employees. As a
well, but now one of the things that I would throw out there is that the fact that this is a fairly, as much as it is an old industry, this is a fairly new industry the way we are doing it now here. In some of these huge industrial grows where you walk into places and they got 20,000 square feet under of grow under roof, and we have not really done the environmental studies that need to get done to see whether or not this is a safe place for people to work. Though I know that in this entire history so far of employees, we've only come across one employee that we can think they have kind of stated that maybe it was a predetermined or pre-existing illness. pre-existing condition that they had that was exacerbated by the dust that was in the air in a grow. So one person out of probably the 70, 80, 200,000 people working in the industry, though we don't want to lose any lives. We don't know for sure if that's really as dangerous as that is. But do you think that it's coming time, or time has come, that this industry ought to look at unionizing its employees?
Well, I don't know about that so much, but I do know that most of the larger employers that I know of in California, people are already wearing monkey suits and ventilators and masks, and they're already taking those steps, because what's happening is the old school, the people who jumped from the old school to the new school, now they're dealing with insurance, workers' compensation claims, labor cases, wage and hour. They're dealing with all these things that, back in the old days, you got paid cash and you shook hands and, that was it. So I think all that is actually developing itself, because people don't want to.
And it got to be developing itself in a sense, like in states where you have a real medical cannabis program, and if you are a card-carrying member in that program, even though it is contrary to federal law, you should not be employers should not be able to discriminate against what you do during your off time, right?
Absolutely.
And like I said, in a lot of states, they have that protection of off-hour cannabis use. A lot of states, they don't still. But I know a bunch of states do, including California. And I think, I want to say Oregon did it too initially, but I don't know all the states who actually did that. So, but I think more and more, I know every grow that I've ever visited in California, everybody's wearing monkey suits and ventilators. So it's employers don't want, especially my employers that I represent on a business level as general counsel, and I see these things from both sides of the fence, employees getting hurt. And, this is the best way to keep your work comp claims down, keep your premiums down, and take care of your employee, keep them safe and keep everybody else safe. So
if people wanted to reach out to the two of you guys, or just even if they're not in California, but they just want to reach out to you to see if they can, gain some more knowledge, where could they go?
So we have a website, popbrothersatlaw.com. We have an easy 855 WASSLAW, WASSLAW. And through our large social media reach, I think we've got like roughly 2 million followers across all platforms. We also have created a worldwide attorney referral network system where we get calls from everybody for all types of different things, whether it's I need a will or a divorce or a car accident or the cannabis stuff. And we just might be able to refer somebody to a good, honest, ethical attorney that I've vetted out personally in their state.
Share with my listeners, a couple of success stories that you've had to help someone tackle some cannabis-related legal problem.
Oh,
share one.
Well, I had mentioned earlier about people who fly here, because I had somebody who flew in from Chicago, came here because the cannabis is better, it's legal, bought at a legal licensed store, has a medical card in Illinois, has a medical card in California, and got on an airplane and got hit with felonies. And in that particular instance, even though it was completely illegal to do that, I was able to convince the DA and the judge by getting medical records from both sides, doctor notes from both sides, and explaining, this guy was just coming here to get some good cannabis for medical use. He's using it on both sides. And that was a case we ultimately were able to get dismissed. We've also had several other cannabis DUI cases where when they come to us and they've shut the fuck up and done what we said, we're able to typically get those dismissed. We use an expert who comes in and is able to go through the cannabis. They do the blood test and it's in there. But you've got THC, THCA, carboxy THC, which remains in your blood that is non-psychoactive. And with a good expert to explain away, and there's no signs of impairment, if you're falling all over yourself, if you're impaired on anything, don't drive. We're the first to say that. But there's such an uptick with these cannabis DUIs. the people who listened to us were able to get those cannabis DUIs completely dismissed, and get them, on with their lives. The other one really interesting good case that we had a few years ago, we had a black gentleman who rented out an Airbnb, and he was sitting on the front porch just minding his own business. The neighbor was under the impression, hey, no, the owners aren't home, nobody's supposed to be there, called the cops. Hey, there's a stranger sitting on the front porch. And the cops came by. He was already in the house, and they went to the backyard, opened the door, no warrant, opened the door to the back, and our client was in there in his underwear, and he had like 100 pounds in the kitchen. And then they went and got a search warrant and did the whole thing. And ultimately, he kept his mouth shut. And that was a case we were able to prove that was a completely an illegal search. There were no signs of a break-in, just some strange black man sitting on a porch. And I really grilled the officer that, what's your probable cause to just walk into somebody's house? You didn't have a search warrant. And so that was another case that we were able to get dismissed. And the cases that we ultimately get dismissed are those where they know their rights, they keep their mouth shut, and then at the end of the day, we can utilize all that to fight the case. So we've been very successful with those.
I did ask earlier to put on, if you could, put on your crystal balls and tell me what you think. But, we're coming up almost out of time. What do each one of you think is going to happen in the next next 2 years when it comes to cannabis?
Go, big brother.
Why don't you go, Brian?
Shit show. I mean, there's supposed to be a rescheduling hearing. We've had a bunch of presidents say we're going to leave it. Trump said the first time around, leave it to the states.
Both, and he said it this time.
Leave it to the states. I mean, come on, dude. Leave it to the states. Do at least that for me, right? But they all don't do it. Biden could have done it. Everybody could have done it. Obama could have done it. Like, what the hell? I mean, so I'm just mind-boggled that, I don't know. I think that's just such a crystal ball of.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think we're still 10 years away. I think we're 10 years away from any movement at all at the federal level. What do you think?
I am much more pessimistic, and I've become more pessimistic over the years because, as I said earlier, 1996, California, 5 years away. Colorado does it 5 years away. More states half the states are doing it. I don't think it's going to happen in our lifetime at all.
Yeah, well, I think I kind of almost agree with you. I think it's more like 10 years because I think what's going to end up happening is we're going to see how other countries completely obliterate this market, completely obliterate what we're doing. I mean, we already know South Africa, Colombia, over 170 countries have pulled out of that 1963 treaty that banned and prohibited the export and importation of hemp and cannabis. So other countries, and they're also starting to see the real benefits medically for some of their constituents in the fact that, you look in Israel, instead of pharmaceutical uses going up post, let's say, 70, geriatric drugs are going down because they have a robust cannabis program there that is allowing people to find their, relief using something other than the pharmaceuticals they've been using. So, but I do think that as we start to get our asses whipped here in America and realize that we're not participating in, the what's going on internationally. And China, is rolling out. They got 1 million hectares of hemp being grown. And you got South Africa. They got 1 million hectares of cannabis being grown. In Colombia, over 1 million hectares. I mean, by the time we blink, we're going to be, with that old term.
The other countries are allowing import and export.
Correct. You can import and export. You can import from Colombia. You can import and export into Germany. Germany is importing a lot, and with their recent rules and regulations, I see us being left behind.
Absolutely,
there has to be a changing of the guard at the federal level for the politics. There just has to be a changing of the guard.
Yeah, and especially when you realize that guys like Matt Gaetz talk about have spoken out loud about the fact of going and attending some of the congressional parties and just as much cannabis being smoked there as being smoked anywhere else.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, I was upset. I thought we had a pro-cannabis, attorney general there for a minute.
Yeah, I was, and I've been upset with the fact that there's just so much smack talk during the election process, and nobody comes through after it's done.
Both sides. A lot of smack, and then nothing gets done. It's back to old politics. That's what's got to change. Until that
absolutely,
changes.
Gentlemen. No, look, gentlemen, I can't say thank you enough for being a part of the show today. I'd love to have you back at another time. I barely got through half my questions. I have a whole load more for you. So if you ever want to come back, you always have a home here, okay?
Absolutely.
You got it. We can definitely arrange that, Montel. Thanks for having us on and giving us this platform to get the word out for people not to...
Give you a shout it out one more time, loud and clear. Where can people go if they want to reach out to you?
All right. So we are on all social media platforms at pot_brothers_law at Pot Brothers at Law on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, potbrothersatlaw.com. And if you want to reach out to us directly, 855-WAS-LAW. We can potentially help you out in other states by referring you to other attorneys. And please remember our 25 words. Why did you pull me over? I'm not discussing my day. Am I being detained or am I free to go? If detained, I invoke the fifth. And then what do you do when the cop asks questions?
Shut the fuck up.
That's it. That is it.
Bingo.
Thank you, Montel. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, guys. You be well. You take care of yourselves. Have a great holiday. Love that family of yours. And thank you so much. And thank you, all of you, for tuning in to this edition of Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear your feedback also, so please send us your comments. Military Makeover is so grateful for the support of Purple Heart Homes, a nonprofit organization that rebuilds and transforms the homes for our veterans.
Our heroes come home with sacrifices most of us can't imagine. As a veteran myself, I've been there and founded Purple Heart Homes to help.
When I tell the story of Purple Heart Homes, it's the freedom to not have to depend on somebody else to do the simple everyday things in life.
Visit phhusa.org/makeover to learn how you can help.